Early on when the channel began, I had a video, I think the fourth video on the channel, called Tommy versus George. It was a reflection on the idea of whether or not I was more like George Lucas, a guy that people didn't believe in, but would inevitably make it, or Tommy Wiseau, a man people didn't believe in and did not make it. I re-edited and re-uploaded that thought in short form, and the reason being for the re-edit and re-upload is, one, I think it's an interesting thought experiment. It's an interesting idea to go over similarities and differences. But more importantly, the larger scale reason why I edited and re-uploaded the video is because recently I had an alternative thought. Option C, as I put it in the short, which is if option A is Tommy Wiseau, where people don't think you'll make it and you don't make it. If option B is George Lucas, people don't think you'll make it and then you do make it, I came up with option C. And after the open rolls, I'll talk about the third possibility. Before I say who I think option 3 is, I'm going to talk about some dates, such as 1953, when option C wrote a book called Paycheck. Then subsequently, how in 2003, Paycheck became a movie starring Ben Affleck and Aaron Eckhart. Or perhaps we can talk about 1954, when the man who I'm going to talk about for option C wrote a story called Adjustment Team, which then in 2011 became a movie starring Matt Damon called The Adjustment Bureau. And I've already reviewed that on the channel. It happened in the first year. It is the most watched video on the channel. Thank you, Brandon, for coming over and talking about The Adjustment Bureau with me and the idea of just how much I enjoy that film. It's in my top rankings. But even if we go past those, what about 1956 and Minority Report, which came out in 2002 as The Minority Report starring Tom Cruise? We can then jump to, well, we can go backwards. Go back to 1954 with The Golden Man, a story that was written and later got retitled to Next in 2007, starring Nicolas Cage. Here's the thing. Whether it be any of those things that I've stated, or 1966's We Can Remember It For You, Wholesale, which was then made in 1990 and then subsequently 2012, and in both cases called Total Recall. Or here's this one. This is the one that really put it over the top for me. That was 1968's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which was later in 1982 and then subsequently 2017 used as the inspiration or the story basis for Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049. But this movie, this book, this story is what really makes Philip K. Dick option C, because Philip K. Dick died in 1982. He died never knowing that his thoughts, his stories, his life's work would go on to be vastly appreciated. And that's why that he stands out in such a contrary way to both Tommy Wiseau and George Lucas. Because Philip K. Dick also wrote A Scanner Darkly in 1977, which in 2006 became a Robert Downey Jr. film. And if we go past films, there were TV shows, two in 2015. The Man in the High Castle from Amazon Prime Video, and Minority Report in 2015 that was on Fox. Then in 2018, Philip K. Dick's Electric Dream show on Amazon Prime was a vehicle for multiple short stories of his to see the light of day with tip-top stars. And so it is this idea of not being appreciated in your own time or acknowledged, not living to see what you thought would work actually working out. That is the option C, or the third category that came to mind, which rivals the George Lucas and Tommy Wiseau concepts, because I know very few people who actually know Philip K. Dick. Many people know his stories. Like I was talking to somebody just yesterday, and I said, "Have you heard of Minority Report?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, Tom Cruise." And I said, "Have you heard of Adjustment Bureau?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, Matt Damon." But the thing is that they know the stories and not the man. To me, it's very reminiscent of how that everybody knows Captain America, but most people don't realize who created him. And so, like, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby have always been benchmarks to me of making it. Because with my 40th birthday coming this year, I think about how Stan Lee didn't create Spider-Man until he was 40. So when Spider-Man turned 50, Stan Lee turned 90. And I also keep in mind how that Jack Kirby didn't draw the Fantastic Four for the first time until he was 44 years old. That way that in case I don't make it to being successful by 40, I can say, oh, well, Jack Kirby didn't draw Fantastic Four until he was 44. But in both of their cases, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, they were known and appreciated and respected in their own times. Literally, Stan is called the man and Jack is called the king of comics. So, like, both of them really fit more under that George Lucas mentality than they do the Tommy Wiseau or the Philip K. Dick scenario. As a matter of fact, I think Bob Kane's ghostwriter, Bob Kane's co-collaborator, Bob Kane's forgotten partner, Bill Finger, more fits the Philip K. Dick category than any other, because Bill Finger, who was the guy who had so much to do with the success of Batman, and not as much Bob Kane. Not saying that Bob Kane did nothing, but the thing is, Bill Finger did so much and for so long was uncredited for his contribution. That's why that he feels like the equivalent to Philip K. Dick, because throughout his life that he lived, Philip K. Dick was struggling and worried and not, he wasn't on the precipice of being the top guy. Whereas right after his passing, or maybe not right after, but not long after his passing, because you have hit after hit after hit, whether it be a Total Recall or Blade Runner, like so many of these things in their time, and then later on they still are seen as top quality things. Because I mean, as much as Arnold Schwarzenegger has had what I will say misses, I think most people remember Arnold for his hits. And yeah, I can't help but mull over the idea of where, when, why, how does success happen? That is just such a fundamental question when it comes to the creative process, because I I was just talking to Aaron yesterday about a couple of upcoming projects, and I said I thought Everlasting Survivors was going to be the one, the hit, right? And it didn't make back its money. And then he was like, "Oh, I thought BC Brit was going to be the hit," and then it didn't make back the money invested. And so, with that reality, I question when will it happen, and that's when the Philip K. Dick story came to my mind. The idea that perhaps it won't even happen in my lifetime. However, as long as I keep putting the effort in, going all the way with Gamble Comics and never giving up, then there's a chance that regardless of whether I'm here or not, the characters, the stories can still at some point be impactful. Because the beauty of how I try to write the stories is they're not in the moment, but they are bigger than that. They are of any time because they are stories that can be related to throughout all of time. While I know when Everlasting Survivors is happening and I know what time frame BC Brood is happening, as long as you come into the story and read it for what it is, you'll see that when it happens is less relevant than what is happening. And with that reality, with that knowledge and that route to take, then that means that regardless of when the story, or in this case the storyteller, is discovered, then it can be universal and timeless. Timeless is definitely a way that I try to make these tales take place, because regardless of when things are in hand, if you can feel that you can relate to the characters and what's happening with them, that's really what it's all about. And that's something I think that Philip K. Dick has always been able to achieve. And in some ways it was also something that George Lucas was quite good at, because a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, it leads to the openness and the ability to just put your head in a different time and place. And yeah, so like I said, option A is Oz more like Tommy Wiseau, a person who believes in himself, who does not achieve in his lifetime, and people see as, well, he tried, but he failed. Is Oz more like George Lucas, who people said, oh, nobody wants to see this space opera, but he believed in himself and proved that they were wrong and he was right? Or will it come to pass that Oz is more like Philip K. Dick, a man who never stops trying, who always persists and pushes forward, and then eventually, in a time when he's no longer there, is when people realize that the authentic Miracle Dominic Canuho, or the natural guardian Reese Shaw, Mattathias Priest, these characters are bigger than the writer. They're bigger than the time when the story came out. That they are a timeless. That the stories are timeless, and that as long as I keep striving to put out quality product, then the win that financial success happens is less important than staying the course for doing what is right when it comes to the characters and the stories, and even the team surrounding. Because that's one thing that I've always held fast to when it comes to Gamble Comics is I always ensure that the team is compensated, so that the only person who comes out short financially is the founder of the company, which is me, because I don't want for people that have worked with me to struggle. And so, with that, thank you for listening to this option C thought process. If you have not purchased Everlasting Survivors from gamblecomics.com, there are copies still available. You should pick it up and leave a comment below what you have thought. If you have not read BC Brute, there are very few first printings still available. Again, pick it up via the description of this or any other video by going to Gamble Comics. And coming in the near future, United and Unhinged, written by Oz and drawn by Aaron Johnson, and Paws on Bluegrass, written by Oz and drawn by Oz. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that you are well, and I hope that you are a fan of the stories that I've written, because it's the reason that this channel exists, and it's the reason the video is going out, is because I believe in these stories. And whether it's the year that we're in, or the year that I'm no longer with us, or somewhere in between, I do believe that these characters in these stories are important and have the ability to impact everyone later.